Hi, I'm Doug Vogt from the Diehold Foundation, and it's been about 1 year since I had that COVID-19 D version of the virus. I'm mostly over it and feel very good, gained some weight back, and if I cough occasionally, forgive me, but I'm doing much, much better. This is a pretty important video. One of the questions I had in going through the legends and stuff like that is, what caused these people worldwide to build shelters? Whether it be cave shelters or pyramids or pyramid mounds all over the world. What told them to do this? What events did they see that they knew something terrible was going to happen? They better start building a shelter. I'm going to cover that. I'm also going to cover what government is doing to save the grid, which is what I'm getting to at the end of this thing. It also will tell you what to look for yourself and also how to prepare for this thing, which might happen. We're in solar cycle 25, and I estimate it's going to maximize at about the middle of 2024. I have the date and the tables you're going to see here. This is important for you, so your house doesn't burn down, and also for your business or where you work. You should tell your bosses or the owners of this danger, and it's a real danger. And you'll see what I mean in the research I've done. That's why it's taken some time to do this video. Anyway, let's get started. This is the book I did 1977. It's turned out to be correct from the very beginning of what causes the Ice Age and polar reversal. And this is the one that the CIA called me up and said, how did you figure it all out? And in 2007, I really did figure the whole thing out, including when the event's going to happen. And this is what we're really talking about here. So, again, what caused these people to build these things? Cave systems. This is in Turkey. And you have to ask yourself, what caused them to do it? And it was really worldwide also. When you see something like this, it's the video series 5, part 1, where I talk about the legends, and you'll see graphs of how many people around the world mention either flood, caves, pyramids, and the other aspects of this polar reversal. Here's a picture of one of the caves in Turkey. They think several thousand people were able to live in this cave system that they have. Now I want to show you, as a geologist, I want to show you the difference between a natural cave and a man-made cave. This is a natural. Naturally, usually you'll see these marks like the bowls where the softer limestone is eaten away by the acid in the water. And it's irregular and the floor is not even. You'll see lumps and stuff like that. In other words, the limestone ate away differently in different areas where it was softer or ate away faster. So it's not smooth. If anyone's been in the Bed Caverns, you know exactly what I mean. Here's another thing you look for. Here you have one strata, looks like sandstone, and the cave is in there. And this is in Argentina. Now, all these caves, and I've seen a lot of them, but I'm not going to show a lot here, all had evidence of human habitation. Carbon-14 dated 9, 12, 24, even one 67,000 years ago. Here's another example. Here's a strata here, softer limestone here, and it ate away. This is Bed Cavern. They think there was a lake above this thing during the earthquake, and the thing collapsed. And I've been through this. Anybody in the southern part of the United States should go to Carlsbad. Don't take the elevator, walk down it and look at the ceiling and the floors and stuff like that. It's a real great experience, but you get an idea how the earth works. Am I pushing the right direction? Okay. Here, not exactly natural. You'll notice all of them have this curve, and it's usually a flat level area. Here's another example. A curve, flat. This one I think is in southern France or northern Spain. Again, that you see, this doesn't make any sense to have the strata run this way and someone cut it through here where it was softer material than over there. This is a cave in the pyramids in Bosnia. Now I'm going to go through that a little later, and you'll see the extent of what people were doing that they felt necessary to escape something. Here's another example, a curve. You know, this is about the reach of a man with a chisel or a pick to make a cave entrance, and all, again, flat. Here's another one. Many of them are two entrances, which was interesting. Now, the United States is not going to be outdone by primitive people. These are what they call dumbs. There are caves, or survival caves. And you'll notice we don't need a guy with a pick. We have heavy equipment with an arm that rotates like this, and we drill holes and put dynamite in and blow it, and that's how we make our caves. We're not going to be outdone by the primitives. There are stories, and they're probably accurate, of cave systems and tunnel systems throughout the United States. As I said, the United States, when we do it big. And here's some examples. This is the videos I covered some of this stuff in Series 4, 5G, H, and 6B. You'll enjoy them. You'll see the proofs there, what's going on. Here's another map. I'm sorry this thing is kind of blurry, but this is the best quality they had. And it can show you, on the East Coast they have extensive ones, and even out west. Then they had the Darpa Contest. What was funny about this contest started, I think it was here. A few months after I got done with the majority of my video series 4 and explained the Ice Age and polar reversal. They knew they had a problem. Well, the contest was like $200,000 or $300,000 worth of prize. Then here, they upped it, or it was here, they had it $200,000 or $300,000, then they upped it to here to about 1.3 million. And here they upped it to about 52 or 53 or 54 million dollars. It gives you an idea how desperate they were for the program to run a Android, totally autonomous robot through a cave system to see if anybody was alive. This is some shots from my book, Reality Revealed, when I was going through pyramids found throughout the world. And this is here in the United States. This is Mississippi. And the structures, these drawings were done in the 19th century. And what they looked like, pretty obviously it was a pyramid shape. And a line to north and south. Here's the one in west side of St. Louis. Didn't quite finish it in time. Here's a picture of another one, Mississippi Mound. I don't know where this one is. I think it was also Mississippi. Ohio. This is Mexico. You have to ask yourself, what told these people to build these huge structures? These are major construction undertakings of an entire civilization. Here, this is an interesting one. This has taken over 500 feet of water off the northwest coast of Cuba. They found this. Pyramids, before the land sunk or the water level was low enough. We don't know. All we know is there's the facts. Here's Ireland. I have a great-grandmother who came from Ireland. More mounds. Now, the Bosnia ones is really interesting. They actually took a mountain or a hill, and the people removed material to make it look like a pyramid. They think there's about 3 of them there. And this is what they did. They put concrete blocks along the side of the pyramid. And this is a huge job, but you wouldn't do this unless you knew something terrible was about to happen and you had to have some kind of shelter. They did find those caves. You saw one of the caves that were in one of these mounds. I guess I'll call them a pyramid. Here's another example. This looks like about an inch and a foot and a half or 2 feet thick. So they were expecting a lot of force coming off, on this stuff. And either they knew about the ocean coming or what, but you start building this and you're saying to yourself, okay, what kind of force is involved that they want to put a capstone or brick or concrete on the surface to keep it eroding away. Here's another example of the block. You can see how thick it is, and there's a sign of a shovel which is about 5 feet high. So now this is very interesting. One of the people had suggested a cave door of using a round ball, and because the sphere is the best way of pressure, holding pressure back, and I said, well, there's a problem with it if the cave entrance is blocked by debris after the thing, that ball's not going to release and come out of the cave. You're stuck there. You have to dig around it or destroy the ball. They found this at the base of the hill. Somebody did use this is an iron metal ball found. This is big. There's a size of a shovel, like 4 or 5 feet. This is like at least 10 feet or more in diameter. So this might have been the block to block the cave door from something with a lot of pressure, like an ocean rushing over you. This is what they think they've got. 1, 2, 3, 4. They got something back there too, and the town's here. They really found something important. They really did. Look how much sediment's above this. Our Great Pyramid of Giza. This goes back before the pharaohs. It does. And I cover in one of the videos in my books. This is the Chinese ones. Aerial view, obviously. And 4-sided pyramids. There's a stretch of China about 10 miles long that have nothing but a bunch of these pyramids. You have to ask yourself, okay, why are they building pyramids and pyramid mounds or digging holes in mountains? Here's one in West Java. It's also aligned to the North Pole, north-south. So somebody had a compass in those days. This is Mars. And they label it as pyramids, and they're right. I blew up this one here, and you can see 2 sides of the shadow. These are in exact straight lines and equidistant. I tested them in Photoshop. That's not natural. There's no mountains are formed by uplift, but there's no fold here. There's no uplift. There's no other mountains going on here. These are man-made, man in quotes, structures. Here's another picture of pyramids. By the way, the one who first found the pyramids on Mars was Carl Sagan. I remember the TV show when he showed it. This goes back to the early 70s. But number of pyramids and mounds and stuff like that. So, okay, so ask yourself, what events did these people see? And it was worldwide. Why would they do this, to go to such efforts to build these structures? So I said, okay, what if it's natural events going on at the time? And what I'll explain here is the Earth doesn't have an iron core. It's not a bar magnet. And I showed that in some of these series down here. There's a center modulation point. It takes time for the heat to translate from here to go through the outer core, lower mantle, and then finally the crust, where you can get more earthquakes and volcanoes. So both volcanoes and earthquakes are really localized events. And I mean, do have worldwide, but it's been kind of uniform through time. There'd be more of them towards the end of the cycle because the upper mantle and the crust is going to get more liquid, and the crust is going to be able to move more freely. So you got earthquakes. But again, that's kind of a localized thing. Volcanoes, well, it's 51 now. As of May 15, 2022, 51 volcanoes actively erupting on the planet. I don't know if it includes the ones in the ocean, which we don't know how many of those are. I love that picture. I think this was Vesuvius. Lovely. Would you like to have that in your backyard? Then you have, as the sun's output starts increasing, and you'll see proof of that, ocean water gets hotter, and guess what happens? You have more hurricanes and typhoons and tornadoes. So would they have noticed there was more hurricanes and something's going on? Mother Nature's mad at us? Or God is mad at us? Don't know. It's possible, but those in the steppes of Russia or Iran had over 100,000 pyramid mounds built there, and they're not near really an ocean. So why? Now, like I said, you're going to have more tornadoes because more evaporation, more storms, and you're going to get it. Now, this is important. The blue line is ocean heat, mean surface temperature for the surface of the Earth, and annual average sunspots. Now, the point you're going to see by just measuring the number of sunspots is not the total picture. When I did this research, that's 25 years ago, I noticed, we used to get printouts, and OSHA would actually mail us a booklet once a month, I think it was. And it had the number of sunspots and also the area of the sunspot. That's important. In other words, they're measuring, the number is not the right way of doing it. You should also measure the area of the sunspot. Then it shows you there's more energy. Later I'm going to give you an example of boiling water. You can do it yourself. But notice, this is, right here is the last Gliceberg cycle. From that Gliceberg cycle in 58, it went straight up. Something happened to our sun here that went this way. Not the number, but you're going to see the activity has gone up. This is what's important to realize, that sometimes those who say they're experts coming out of NOAA or saying there's got a sunspot minimum, they're wrong. Here's the number of tornadoes. Again, from 58 on, kept going up because the sun's output was obviously increasing. Now, primitive people, they live near in the mountains area and they saw glaciers. Yes, the glaciers would be melting. They would know that it's getting warmer and they would connect, okay, the sun's getting warmer, but would they know that the sun's going to nova? Probably not. Unless they had old legends and myths like we do. The other one I actually put in one of my books, I thought, this is a solar eclipse, that eventually our sun is going to expand because the energy output is going to increase. And then the moon would no longer cover the sun, and we have something that looks like a white sidewall tire. Okay, this is what led me to figuring this out, or discovering it. I had two short dreams just before I woke up. One, I was laying in bed, this is in the dream, and all of a sudden the ceiling lights, recessed ceiling lights, started glowing, going on and off by themselves, which I thought was kind of strange, and I wasn't touching the light switch, I was in bed. Then I woke up. The second dream, which was shortly thereafter, was even stranger. I was with a group of men, soldiers, going back in time looking for something called God's chandelier. I'd never heard of that expression before. Now, there was another group of men after World War II, Nazis, who were also looking for God's chandelier. I had no idea what it is or what it was. So, and then I woke up. That was the end of the dream. So I looked, I found a nice lady had written a poem, and called God Chandelier. And I finally realized that, and looking at a few others, that was the Aurora Borealis. So I said, okay, maybe someone's trying to tell me something. And so I started doing research on the sun. What's really going on. So a little background, this is a Gliceberg cycle. It's 8 sunspot maximums. The 8th is the greatest, then it drops down. And Gliceberg is the one who discovered it. And that's what this process is, and that's what you're about to see. And you can go see these videos to go through it. What's interesting, it's 88.73 years, 136 Gliceberg cycles is, the magic number is 12,068 years. That's all you have to know. Okay, the famous one that we're told about and everybody's scared about is the Carrington event. It happened September 2nd, 1859. That was, now this is when the Gliceberg cycle was then, number 134. It was 1869. So this was in the sunspot max solar cycle just before the Gliceberg. And they estimated it to be an X45 Carrington event. And it was very powerful. Oh, I got to say something about Carrington. He was just an amateur astronomer. But his real work and his business was as a brewer. He owned a brewery. So between drinking his product, which I'm sure he enjoyed, he was an amateur astronomer. And so maybe that's what he used as an excuse to his wife. I'm going to go to the telescope, and he went to the bar instead. But we won't go into that. But this is what he drew for what happened. It was a pretty big sunspot. So I'm thinking about, okay, then the question is whether can an X45 Carrington event happen now, or what's our probability of having it? Because it was so bad that I'm going to teach you a little bit less how they measure the density of these things in electrons. What happened was the telegraph wires, which is the only technology they had then, gathered and collected the electrons from this flare, and it burned some of the telegraph offices. It burned some of them down, and there was a story about a telegraph operator in New York City talking to either Boston or New Hampshire, and he said to the guy in New Hampshire, disconnect your battery. And they communicated for hours just on the voltage being generated from this flare on the wires going between Boston and New York. So, what he was saying, okay, in the Carrington event, they said it was a green curtain aurora. It could be seen. They saw it as far as Cuba, Hawaii, Mexico, and Colombia. That's like on the equator. So it gives you an idea how bad it was, is that there was that many charged particles hitting the Earth that it glowed. They said even miners woke up thinking it was dawn. They must have been in Alaska or something in Northern County, and they're mining there. It was so bright that people were able to read a newspaper by the light of these things. So that's how bad it was. Okay, this is called logic and wake up. If you think CO2, your car, your hibachi, and you breathing too much is causing global warming, that's the alternate lie given to people to redirect you away from the truth. This is the sun. That's about what the size of the Earth is to the sun. So what do you think has the greatest effect on the heating effect on the Earth? You breathing and CO2, or that? See, this is an IQ test. I've shown this before. And the way an intelligence agency works is this. They redirect you away from the subject they're trying to protect. So what they did was they went to a school that they had a lot of control over, which was Columbia University. And they went to this guy, Wallace Boucher, I think that's how you pronounce it. Lamont Doherty, he's a geologist, or was, he's deceased now. Columbia University. This is the paper, Science Journal. I covered this in Series 4, Part 6b. And that's the article, volume 189, page 460. And I go through it and I show it. And you can go see it. Climate change, are we on the brink of a prominent global warming? He's the father of it. They went to him and had him wind up writing this paper. In no place in this paper, it's a pretty short one, does it ever mention the sun. Now, about 2 years after, a real solar physicist and wound up writing a paper and says there's over 1,000 journal articles that show the sun-earth weather connection. That's how you know this was not a science paper that Wallace wrote. It was a political document by this organization to wind up deceiving man so you don't think about the sun. That's important. Remember, in 69, they brought the samples back from the moon, and they knew the sun novas. An example of how that agency controlled the journals in science, I did a comparison of searching articles of searching for cosmic rays and fission tracks. Cosmic rays, the journal Science is published here in the United States. Nature is published in England. You can see the number is markedly different. Now here they were doing the research. I actually have all these articles. 250. 4,572 for Nature. Should be a red flag. That tells you immediately we have a controlled science. Journal Science, searching for fission tracks. That's really getting to the core of it. Look how few, only 12 from 55 all the way to 2019, 12. In England, the rest of Europe, 353. I don't have to say any more. Now, what's happened here is this. When I did the research and stuff like that, the National Science Foundation was formed, was it 59, the bill passed, and I showed in one of the papers, I think it was this one, Part 5D, what happened was the Defense Department had a group called Central Intelligence Group. That was pulled out and became the Central Intelligence Agency. They wound up wanting to have board of directors on the National Science Foundation that was going to be formed by Congress. And they wanted to have like 10 or 15% of the grants to them. I have no problem with that anyway. So when they took over, the CIA became a separate agency, they obviously were controlling what grants were given to professors to do research. If you did research on that subject, fission tracks on particles or cosmic rays, forget it, you're not getting the money. You're not going to. He who pays the piper plays the tune. One thing you learn as being an accountant, you follow the money trail. And that's what happens here. So you want to know why they wasted $21 trillion? Because they didn't have the answer. They made sure the scientists didn't. By the way, I also knew on the National Science Foundation, the scientists can only get 1 month reimbursed from the grant. But the administration could take half if they want to, maybe even more if they can get away with it. So it's really a political bribe to the school administrators to toe the line for whatever the political winds blow. In this case, it's far left and socialist and communist, unfortunately. One thing I'd say about the polar versus the nova, it does level everybody. This is the problem we have now. In 1859, the way they measure the Earth's magnetic field is in nanoteslas. It used to be gammas, 31.5 something. Now it's down to 29, less than 29. It doesn't have to go to zero when it actually reverses. What I think happens is the information that makes up the matter holds holds up the field, something like a secondary coil in a magneto, which is used in piston planes, and it creates a real big spark. But it holds the field up, and then it collapses and immediately snaps and reverses. And I think that's what we're facing here, because when they tested the strength of remnant magnetization in lava flows during the reversal, it was like 15,000 gammas or nanoteslas. And so it didn't have to go to zero, it snapped. Okay, so there's several ways to measure energy. Now, this is the date, February 20th, 1958 is when I calculated the height of the Gliceberg cycle was. That was number 135. Now, they had a flare, February 23rd, 1956, that was a solar particle event. It was a minus 850 nanotesla, and it was assumed to be an X17, about there, X15, F17. Let me explain how they measure this stuff. They measure the strength of the Earth's magnetic field at the equator. So you imagine you got the pole, the Earth, then you have a magnetic field around it. When this dust shell hits, and it hits it from 14 to 18, 19,000 miles per second, it pushes and deflates or pushes the magnetic field in towards the Earth. So we now have a weakened Earth's magnetic field, so it's now even more pronounced. So they measure how much the field is depressed by minus nanoteslas. That's how they're doing it. So the bigger that number gets, it means it was a bigger solar flare. So the other way of doing it, how many clear days, they actually call them spotless days of no sunspots during the quiet periods, the solar minimum. So I did from 1860 to 1947, that's when I was born, a total of 6,084 days in total, or an average of 676 average days. Average is the number of days of clear no sunspots, which we assume low activity. But after that Gliceberg cycle, look, went down. This was I can't really say a quiet period, but it was unusual. Average 398 clear days over an entire 11-year cycle. It's reduced by 41%. That means the solar activity has increased. You can't deny it at this point. Something happened during this Gliceberg cycle. Okay, this is where I go through from solar cycle 21. I couldn't do it earlier because they didn't have the satellites up until now and to this point, and that's when they were really recording it and giving us what their X value is, what they estimated. This is again how many electron volts per square centimeter. And you have to add a bunch of zeros to this. Everything is measured by millions of electron volts, so greater than 10 million electron volts per square centimeter. So this is like saying it's 500 million electron volts per square centimeter. That's a lot. But you watch this number and you'll be scared, and you should be. Anyway, I measured from, this is where I calculated sunspot maximum was for solar cycle 21, March 29th, 1980. This is the number of solar cycles since the last polar reversal. So, this is how many X flares we've had. We had in 78 and X15. Goes on. Now, the part that's shaded is before 2 years. I took 2 years on both sides, and then I took the ones from the very beginning of the cycle to the very end of the cycle, in the quiet period. So I wanted to see if there was a difference. Oak Ridge National Labs, by the way, they didn't do this. You'll see, I'm going to cover them shortly. Okay, so you have a total of 29 X-rated flares in that period of time. But you'll notice in red, I put in red all the ones that are over 10. It's quite a few. If they hit us, we'd be in trouble. I mean, you'd have the aurora borealis, no problem. This is cycle 22, from 88 to, well, 92, or does it go further? Yeah, it goes, I think it goes, no, I think this one just that far. It was 1991, and this is the Quebec one. It was X15 minus 600 nanoteslas. So it pushed the magnetic field at the equator by that much. Quebec, and what happened was their lights went out for 9 hours. It overloaded the systems, the transformers, some burned out, and they had to rewire and stuff like that. And so that's what happened here. That was measured at 600 nanoteslas. This here gets interesting. We had an X13, that's 40 billion electrons per square centimeter. You imagine that if it hits our transmission lines, it would fry it. So you can see a whole bunch of X12s, X9s. Look at the electron density. Now, OSHA did have what their estimates for most of these, 50, 100 and stuff like that. I didn't take anything that was below like 800 or something like that. There was no point to it. So that's 22. It ended then. 23, this one gets interesting. This whole thing, 25 X flares, more than 2 years out from when I calculated the maximum would have been as 2002. And you can see this was very active, the whole period. X20s, X14.4s. I mean, really pretty active. It finally, get this, a total of 70 X flares in that one solar cycle. This was the biggest one in 2003 that had been recorded so far. This one here in 2003, in October, X17.2 blacked out Sweden because it's so far north. It blacked out their electrical system. So you can see this is kind of a serious subject. And X8s, X17s, but they didn't hit us or partially hit us and not full force. But this is kind of scary, this one. This is 24, the one just before us. Right now we're in the beginning of X25, or I should say solar cycle 25. Only two before, older than 2 years. This is where I estimate 2013 was the maximum, sunspot maximum. This one is the biggest. A Carrington-size event, it missed us. An X34, July 2012. They estimated an X34. But look, a lot. A hell of a lot of them. Total of 52 X flares. These 4 was a big surprise for the solar physicists. This is sunspot minimum. And all of a sudden they had an X9 and an X8? This isn't supposed to be. This is not in the textbooks. Right off the bat, you should immediately know everything they have in the textbook of how the sun gets its energy is totally wrong. That should be so obvious. This is our cycle now. Started on July 3rd, our first X cycle. This doesn't include, let me explain. The lowest cycle is C's, and then it goes to M-class solar bursts, flares, and then the X ones. So I just did the X ones because that really told the whole story. We've had so far 14 X flares going 2 years before, I estimate. The maximum will be August 10th, 2024. So That's where we are so far. Now, this has to show you something's up with our sun. Cycle 21 had on the average of 5.5 was the average X flare. Cycle 22 is 5.1. Cycle 23 was 4.1. Cycle 4, 2.9 was the average. But this one had 70 X flares. This was 53. I'm sorry, 52 X flares. That doesn't count all the M flares that were pretty big too. This is the one from July. It missed us. There's the Earth. This is the arc of that X flare. Either X30 or 34. If it hit us, we'd have a Carrington event and we wouldn't be talking right now. They'd still be repairing the transmission lines. So this is what it looked like. But fortunately, we were not in its loving attention. We were far away. So they estimated at minus 1,200. And remember, the Carrington event, they estimated between minus 850 to minus 1,750 nanoteslas. In other words, that's what it depressed the Earth's magnetic field at the equator. So you could have one even as early as the previous sunspot cycle. We're in one, we only have two more or less, this one and the next one before we have the Gliceberg again. February 2014, this physicist, Pat Riley, he did a study, I guess similar to me. He went back 50 years and measured the probability of having a Carrington-type event within 10 years of this date, which is interesting. He must have figured out at 2024 is when the next sunspot cycle is going to be. He came up with a possibility of a 12%, and he said in his paper, it was a sobering figure. They realized 12% is a pretty high percentage. What I've seen so far, now he did this paper February 2014. He didn't see what happened at the end of that solar cycle 23, where you had 4 X flares during sunspot minimum. He missed a whole bunch of that stuff. So he might have revised it up. I would say there's a 15 to 20% chance we can have a Carrington-like event hitting the Earth in this sunspot cycle. So the Quebec one that knocked out their lighting was at minus 600 nanoteslas. And as you can see, this is what they think the Carrington ones was. And we are in the possibility of getting one of these things. The duration of one of these things when it hits, he said 2 to 8 hours. But this dust shell hits us at 1,500 to maybe 1,800 miles per second. And it seems to me that it would be very fast, but the effects of wiping out our grid may be more than 2 to 8 hours. I don't know. I think nobody really knows. And also, may I add this? When this dust shell leaves the sun, like when you look at a nova, like VIII 38 Monocritus, it's not uniform. There's holes in the thing, especially as it expands and goes out. Oh, so you could have 100 miles away gets the full force of it, but 100 miles away where you are, it could be almost nothing or very little. You're still going to the Aurora Borealis over your head, but you understand the point. It's a crapshoot. It's hit or miss, and we don't know. All we know is generally if you're going to get hit by this thing or not, but you can't even say within the area that's going to hit if you're going to get the full force of the thing or you're just going to get a little bit of it. We don't know. But they said as short as 8 hours or as long as 7 days for the Earth's magnetic field to recover. This is solar cycle 24 minimum. September 6th, 2017, the flare was 9.3. Does that look like 9.3 to you? This is a picture from NASA. That's pretty scary. Remember, the Earth is probably a little dot, like not even the size of my thumb, my pinky maybe. So it gives you an idea. You don't want to be anywhere near this thing when it goes. Solar cycle 24, April 2022, and X 1.1. This is the one that destroyed radio reception in Southeast in Australia and Southeast Asia. That's what it looked like. So 1.1, and it's affecting radio reception. Okay, more reality check. Now, this is the average number of sunspots in the cycle. I really don't like to have the average because it really covers up the real activity of the sun. But anyway, you can see it was going down just the number of sunspots. But when you look at the X flares, 29 and 32, 70 here. This is like about 20% less than this. 70 X flares. And 52 here, and this is half of that. You know, right off the bat, something's wrong with how we're measuring the output of the sun. It's not just the number of sunspots. And I'll explain. This is an experiment you can do at home. Take a nice cooking pot, put it on the stove, put about 5 or 6 inches of water in it, and then turn on the gas full blast. And then watch it boil. At first, you're going to see hundreds, if not thousands, of little tiny bubbles at the bottom of the pot. Now, it gets hotter and hotter. The bubbles get larger, but less of them. So it's the area of the sunspot tells you how hot this thing is really getting. Also remember this, and you're going to see it in a moment. The sun gives off an entire full spectrum, from the high ultraviolet to the infrared that we can't see. They can see it giving all of it off. So here's our here's our last Gliceberg cycle, and here's the one before then. Something happened. This is the temperature, the average temperature of the Earth, gone up 1.5 degrees centigrade, and here's the number of sunspots. As I showed, it's not matching. Something else is going on. The sun is giving off other frequencies that are heating up not only the atmosphere, but really the ocean water. Sea surface temperature is part of the best ways of knowing the output of the sun, plus solar luminosity. Here's another example. I put the arrows here to show where Gliceberg cycles were. And you can see there's the 8th, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The 5th one usually is pretty low. Don't know why. There's other frequencies going on in the sun, and that makes it give up less energy. But look what happened after that. It went up until it really blew. This is the corresponding, we'd be like in this level, 25 would be this, 26 would be maybe that or worse, and then you have the Gliceberg. But this Gliceberg we're going to have now, I think, is when the sun novas, and this is a spike right through the roof. So, but you can tell right off the bat, the number of sunspots doesn't tell you the whole story. With 70 X-rated flares here and 52 here, which is half of that thing from number 22 or 21, you know right off the bat, they're not measuring all the output of the sun correctly. Anyway, this is a grand solar minimum. You've heard some people on the internet claiming, oh yes, we're heading for a grand solar minimum, like it's now. Grand solar minimum dismissed by the IPCC. They know it's not true. This tells you right off the bat it's not true. It's a lie. Again, redirect you. Don't look at the sun. Oh no, it's just fine. Don't worry about it. Go to the beach. This is even a bigger joke. I think actually the person, Eddie, I don't know who he is, came up with this graph. This shows you, there's your Gliceberg cycle and this. He's assuming or making the story, we're going to have a sunspot minima here, a Monnier minimum like here back in the 1700s. Oh yeah. And therefore we're going to have a mini ice age. Well, he's wrong about the mini part. Cross that out. We're going to have an ice age because right here, oh, this is the funny part. The line shows it roughly around 2046. Maybe he knows also. Maybe he watched my stuff. Who knows? But anyway, yeah, sun novas, at least 500 feet of ocean water worldwide is evaporated. And guess what? It comes back at first couple of weeks, maybe hot rain, and then rain, then snow, and snow for the next 40 or 50 years maybe, till all that moisture is wrung out of the atmosphere. That's what's going on here. So, back to the builders. What I think these people saw that told them they had to start building shelters of various types is the aurora borealis showing up much too often. And they knew something bad was going to happen. They probably also noticed it was getting warmer because the sun's output is going to increase. And the end result is they started building. They may have had legends from previous civilization, their ancestors. May also add this. Every single one of us, everybody on the planet, is a direct result of a survivor of this last polar reversal and cataclysm. That's the truth of it. Don't ever forget that. So for their benefit, you should do everything you can to try to survive this thing. Anyway, that's what they saw, the aurora borealis and australis in the southern hemisphere, and they knew something was up. The only thing that makes any sense. Okay, now Carrington Events. This is right from an article from Forbes magazine, and here's the link of it here. The physics behind this is both simple. Charged particles moving in large numbers and at high speeds will create their own magnetic fields like any electrical current. These magnetic fields are strong enough they can subsequently change the local magnetic field at Earth's surface. Well, they depress it a lot, let's put it that way. And if you change the strength and or direction of a magnetic field that passes through a loop or coil of wire, that changing magnetic field will induce an electric current. Power stations, substations, power transport infrastructure, and even residential, commercial, and industrial electronics are all full of loops and coils of wire. The induced current, if we were to experience a Carrington event today, would literally be astronomical. Now, you ignore the words between the parentheses. The induced current would literally be astronomical. That's really the message here. This is a common pole transformer. And this is what happens when it gets overloaded. It burns and blows up. Now, the reason why they blow up like that is, like I mentioned in one of the previous videos, they're filled with oil. And when a liquid goes immediately to a gas, you have an explosion. It's called a steam explosion. Well, you have the same thing also with oil, too. This is an example that kind of surprised me. This is a transformer that blew, and it sent a voltage through the wire to the next pole. You go onto YouTube and search for transformer fires and go look at them, and you realize what you're dealing with. Now, this is from the power companies. This safety zone is this. What happens is when you have an electric field, it forms an electric current flowing through a wire. It creates a magnetic field around it. When that magnetic field, when too much voltage is in the line, its magnetic field gets larger and larger. And when an electrical engineer explained, it gets large enough and it hits a tree or something, it winds up sparking and creates a fire. Just like this picture from the power company winds up going to a tree and starting a fire. So if you're near power company lines, big power lines, make sure that the grass is cut. There's nothing underneath the wires or around it that can cause a fire. If we have a Carrington event, you're going to have fires in your area from power lines like this, and there's nothing you can do about it. What was wrong about the discussion about coils and stuff like that, don't think it's just a coil. Remember the Carrington event in 1859, it was wires, it's just transmission wires. And those copper wires picked up the electrons. And that's what happened. So all these transmission lines are going to get additional voltage, more than they ever experienced. Remember what it showed for electron density on these X flares. Somewhere as high as 40 and 43 billion electrons per square centimeter. This is not a pretty picture. This is the bigger transformers. When these things go, you can't replace these so fast. It takes maybe a year or so until they can make one and deliver it, or maybe if you're lucky, a half a year. But you'd be without electricity for a long time. The problem is these substations and transmission stations are not grounded enough. When the power companies try to ground them, the copper wires and other metal they use for grounding are stolen for the metal. So if you're a smelter and some idiot comes in with these kind of wires, you turn him in immediately because he's going to affect you directly. And anybody knows somebody who's stealing wire and stuff like that, you turn them in. I don't care if it's a relative, you turn them in, because what it means is devastating. You'll see. This is what I go into. They're undergrounded power stations and substations because the crooks are stealing the copper or the rods that are going to the ground to do it for the metal. For power companies to cut off current in their electrical grids, gradual ramping down, takes apparently approaching 24 hours to disconnect ground stations and substations so that large induced currents don't flow into homes, businesses, and industrial buildings, creating fires. You saw that line, a power line with a big electric spark going across it, that causes a fire. The fastest solar flare to travel from the sun to the earth journeyed at about 14.6 hours. Now, when I estimated the speed of a nova was about 18 hours, 17 hours, which is about 15,000 miles per second. So these things are going even faster than that to get there in 14.6 hours. The average is not that, but with a Carrington event, nobody knows how fast it'll get here. But they're going to have to shut these things down faster than that. In a very real sense, the danger is definitely coming. This is from that guy's paper, by the way. It's only a question of when. If we do nothing to prepare when the big one hits, we can look forward to trillions of dollars worth of infrastructure damage and quite possibly an enormous number of deaths. He's not kidding. Okay, this is what you have to look for. See these fluorescent bulbs? I know they're replacing with LED stuff. Keep some of them. Remember my dream. I'll tell you how these things work, for those who don't know. Inside here, in the ballast, it creates a high frequency. It ionizes the gas inside the bulb, which gives off ultraviolet light, which fluoresces the fluorescent material coated on the inside of the glass. That's how these things work. So, but if you have charged particles coming from the sun, it's the same thing as the ballast doing it. So if they start glowing and you didn't turn on the light switch, you may be the subject, ground zero, of charged particles from the sun. So this is what you're going to do if that happens. Or you get notified that we're going to have one. In fact, it's actually the 9th today, if not the 8th. A few days ago, I think we were going to get an aurora borealis from a solar flare from a couple of days before. This is the first step you go. You go to your meter. This is the one I've got. It's a switches here. If you have an arm like this, you go and you immediately turn it off. You shut off the electricity in your house. You want to disconnect your house or business from the electrical current from the grid, because it may be light where you are, but where the grid is, it's going to pick up a lot of voltage from these particles. Second thing, you disconnect every appliance, TV, computer, other electrical devices from the wall socket. Disconnect any network wires from your computer and router. All your computers and TVs should be connected to uninterrupted power supplies, commonly known as a UPS. We're not talking about the drivers. And should be 1,000, 1,500 watts. Some of them are bigger than that. You should have them. I have a bunch of them. You should have them. Don't forget to have ample food and medical supplies in your home. Also, make sure you have cash on hand as well as gold and silver. We don't know how long the electrical system is going to work, and believe me, your credit cards are not going to work. So, now, Department of Homeland Security has wonderful web pages on what to do during a solar flare or disaster. They have kits, what they listed, what you should have in your house. I'm not covering them here. Your job is to, use your head about this thing and prepare as best you can. But make sure you might have a half a day or a day's notice, go out and buy food, get a bunch of cash, thousands of dollars, because the cash machine is not going to work. If you're going to buy food, you're going to be buying food with money, cash. And it gets bad enough, it's going to be gold and silver. Other thing, third step, fill your bathtub with water. Now, this came from Amazon. I have two types. Plastic sheet, you put it into your tub. Another one is a big bladder, basically. You fill it up with water. You do that immediately also. You have other family members, you give them that job to do. Fill up all your tubs, because you need water to cook and also flush the toilet. If you have a pool or a hot tub, don't put any more chlorine in it, because you may be using that to at least flush the toilet. Have buckets so you can bring water from the pool to the toilets, and you may be washing in it also. This report was by the Oak Ridge National Laboratory that did the study. I found two minor errors in the study. You can get this thing online, and you should look at it. This is how the grid is divided up in the United States and Canada. We're linked together. And how they do it. We're down here in Florida. This is what happened in Africa, which is interesting. Oak Ridge didn't really do that good a research project. October, November 2003, geomagnetic storm. It hit heavily Africa, South Africa. This is what the windings in one of those big transformers happens. They melt. They burn and melt. But they didn't look at this. This thing happened October, November, but look, October 28th, X 17.2, 29th, X 10, X 8.3, X 3.9, X 28, and November 5th. We don't know which one of these hit South Africa and did that. But now you get a picture of what the real danger is. It's this. This is the danger. Nuclear plant GSU transformer incidents within 25 months after the March 1983 storm. That was Quebec. It was an X-15. Now, they noticed that they had a bunch of those big transformers failing, and these are within 2 years of 25 months. So I looked, 25 months, what other X flares showed up? X13. But look how many billions of electron volts. Look at that. 89, 91, 91, June, March, July. That covers the period that they're looking at in this study. They don't know or haven't connected that any one of these could have nailed these transformers. This is the other part. This is the other error I found right there. This was based on the Quebec flare X15. What if it hit now, which part of the grids have a probability of grid collapse? And so the East, Texas area, and the whole East, the whole West Coast, or should they now call it the left coast? Now, this is the mistake. Like I mentioned earlier, they measure the strength of the storm by how much it depresses the Earth's magnetic field at the equator. So it's usually a minus number. So they had a positive 4,800 nanoteslas. Now, are they saying that it went from 20,000 nanoteslas to 4,800? I don't think they're really saying that, but if they were, I think it really should be a negative 4,800, and they just didn't put it in this graph, in this presentation. They did, but if it was, it would be 2.7 times greater than the Carrington event. Carrington event was X45. If it was a minus 4,800, it would be an X123. You think anything would be left? The whole part of the United States would be blacked out. It would be toast. Almost to the end. The United States is actually finally doing something. And there's a Senate Bill 4488, introduced by the chairman, Michigan Chairman Peters, and ranking member Robert Portman. Now, both of them, this is the key part, Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee. They're the ones, employees from Homeland Security are the ones who contacted me, about a year ago? A year and something ago? And they looked at my stuff and they finally explained why the government was spending all this money on survival stuff. But I think this bill, after reading it, really originated from the Defense Department. They went to Homeland Security to carry the water. Homeland Security is mentioned 4 times in the bill. But I'm not going to try to scare you with this video, what's in here. The next video, I'm going to go through this bill, and you deserve to know it. I'm going to go through the good parts. Under Section 2 definitions, basic need. Basic need means goods, services, and activity necessary to protect the health, safety, and general welfare of the civilian population in the United States. Thank you very much for not including Cuba and any other communist country. Includes food, water, shelter, basic communication services, and public safety. Definition, catastrophic incident. The term catastrophic incident means an incident, whether caused by human or natural events, in which multiple levels of United States critical infrastructure are destroyed, damaged, or interrupted in significant magnitude to threaten the health, safety, and general welfare of the civilian population in the United States. Anyway, that's a good point. They're on the right track. Section 6, strategy to ensure the health and safety of the general population. Assumptions goes through. Impact sectors, transportation. You need electricity to wind up pumping diesel fuel and gasoline. and the pumps that bring the fuel to the refineries. Communication sector, internet, telephone, radio and communications, all need electricity. You know, no electricity, you have no communications. Energy sector, well, yes, completely, totally. It takes electricity to do the pumps to pump the oil out of the ground. Also the power generating companies, that's the energy sector, I almost forgot them. Healthcare and public health sector. Imagine a hospital without electricity. Hey, you're going back to the 19th century. Forget about CAT scans and x-rays. Water and wastewater sectors, that's important for us. It takes electric pumps to bring the water to your house. Even if you have your own pump, or well, like here in Florida, a lot of people do. Wastewater, definitely, it takes pumps to remove the shit back to the sewer treatment plant. So if you don't have electricity here, but I assume that both the water company and the sewage company have backup diesel generators, but you don't know how much diesel fuel they have reserved to keep it going for how many days or weeks. This may be a case where they have to be going for months. So they're going to need the energy sector to supply and deliver diesel fuel to their generators. Financial sector. Well, people can't get money out of the bank if the bank has no electricity. We're back to 19th century and posting things all by hand. And, you know, they want to make that bankers happy, and Wall Street too. But I don't begrudge them for that at all. But that's the situation. I want people to support this bill. They're finally doing something smart, which is they're going to harden the transmission lines and the grid. They have to. Otherwise, you now know what's going to happen. Diehold Foundation is a nonprofit foundation. I'd like to raise enough money to I want to send Tom Surbridge, he's a geologist retired from Forest Service, very good soil guy. I want to send him to Machu Picchu, and it's at 12,000 feet, the lakes there, to see and do the research to find out if the Pacific Ocean sloshed that high. We have to know how high that wave will be and what force it has, so we know what we have to build in the cave door to be able to take those kind of pressures. If it's like 3,000 feet of ocean water, you're talking 1,500 pounds per square inch that door has to be able to withstand. Any other questions? You know, you can send me emails if you want. If you send me an email, I'll put you on my mailing list. And I hope you'll learn something and you're not too scared from this. Just tell your boss about this so they understand to prepare for this thing so you don't lose your job and the business doesn't go away and you don't have your house burned down.